account is funded, the trade is live, and the person you thought you were has vanished. That is the moment every trader eventually faces, and almost nobody talks about it honestly. Before the money was real, you were calm, analytical, patient. You had a plan. You had rules. You had confidence in the setup, but the instant real capital entered the equation, something shifted. Your heart rate climbed. Your breathing shortened. Your eyes locked onto the chart with an intensity that had nothing to do with analysis and everything to do with fear. The candle that looked harmless on a demo account suddenly felt like a personal threat. The retracement you would have ignored yesterday now felt like the market singling you out. You were no longer trading the chart. You were trading your own nervous system. And the market, which has no opinion about you whatsoever, was simply continuing to move while you came apart at the seams. This is not a story about weak traders. This is a story about human beings encountering something that exposes the gap between who they think they are under pressure and who they actually are. That gap is where most trading careers end, quietly, gradually, through 1,000 small emotional decisions that accumulate into account destruction. Not because the strategy was flawed, not because the analysis was wrong, but because the person executing the strategy was never prepared for what it would feel like to execute it, with real money at stake. I have seen this pattern repeat itself across every type of trader, every level of experience, every size of account. The novice who panics after 2 ticks, and the veteran who panics after 200. The trader with a $20 account, and the trader with a $200,000 account. Real money changes the psychological experience of trading in ways that no amount of backtesting or demo trading can replicate. And the traders who refuse to acknowledge that fact are the ones who pay for the lesson most expensively. The first thing to understand is that the panic you feel when real money is on the line is not irrational. It is completely logical. Your brain is responding to genuine threat, the possibility of losing something that cost you real time and real effort to accumulate. The problem is not that the fear exists. The problem is that most traders have never built any infrastructure to function clearly while the fear is present. They have built strategies. They have back-tested systems. They have studied charts until midnight. But they have never once practiced what to do with their own mind when the pressure of a live position is making every rational thought harder to access. And without that practice, the strategy is useless, because a strategy only produces results when it is actually followed, and it can only be followed by a mind that has been prepared to follow it under conditions that feel genuinely threatening. Think about what happens in the moments before a panic decision. The trade is open. It has moved some number of ticks against the position. In isolation, that number is insignificant, but it does not feel insignificant because real capital is attached to it. The mind begins generating scenarios. What if it keeps going? What if the whole setup was wrong? What if this is the trade that wipes out the progress of the last 3 weeks? Each scenario feeds the next, and the emotional temperature rises without any additional information arriving from the market itself. The market has not changed. The setup has not been invalidated. Nothing meaningful has happened. But the trader is now making decisions from inside a storm of catastrophic thinking that has nothing to do with the actual price action on the screen. That is the state from which the worst decisions in trading are made. Closing too early, moving the stop, adding to a losing position, abandoning the plan entirely. Every one of those decisions feels completely reasonable in the moment, and every one of them is driven not by the market, but by the internal experience of sitting with uncertainty and finding it unbearable. Here is what separates the traders who survive from those who do not. The survivors did not eliminate fear. They built a relationship with it that allowed them to function clearly while it was present. They understood something that most traders spend years failing to grasp. Calmness is not a feeling that arrives before you enter the trade. It is a capacity that is built before you enter the trade, through a specific kind of preparation that most people skip because it is less interesting than studying charts. That preparation begins with a single question, asked and answered in cold blood, long before the market opens. What will I do if this trade immediately moves against me? Not what do I hope will happen. Not what does my analysis suggest should happen. What will I actually do, with specific numbers attached, when the position is live and moving in the wrong direction? Most traders answer this question vaguely, if at all. They know they have a stop-loss defined, but they have not mentally rehearsed what it will feel like when the price approaches that level. They have not practiced the experience of watching the number get closer, while the emotional pressure to move the stop builds steadily. And so when it happens in real time, they encounter it as a novel and threatening experience. And they respond from the most primitive part of their decision-making, the part that wants to avoid pain immediately, regardless of the consequences. The traders who stay calm have rehearsed this scenario until the response is almost mechanical. They know the stop is at a specific level. They know that if the price reaches that level, the trade closes. They have already accepted the financial consequence of that outcome before the trade began. This prior acceptance is not a small thing. It is the entire foundation of calm execution. When you have genuinely accepted the worst realistic outcome before the trade starts, the market loses its power to panic you during the trade, because it cannot threaten you with something you have already made peace with. Consider the difference between two traders entering the same position. The first has a stop defined on paper, but has not mentally inhabited the experience of that stop being hit. He is hoping the trade works, and his calmness during the trade depends entirely on the trade moving in his favor. The moment it does not, the hope collapses, and fear floods in to replace it. The second trader has sat quietly before the trade, and genuinely worked through the scenario of the stop being triggered. She has felt the discomfort of that imagined outcome, and stayed with it long enough to accept it as a possibility she can survive. When the same trade moves against her, she does not encounter a novel threat. She encounters a scenario she has already processed. The market is doing something she considered in advance. Her response is predefined. She is not making decisions under pressure. She is executing a plan made when there was no pressure at all. The role of fear in trading is misunderstood almost universally. Most traders treat fear as the enemy of good trading, something to be eliminated or suppressed or overcome. But fear is not the problem. Fear is a signal. It is telling you that something important is at stake, that the situation requires your full attention, that the outcome is not certain. All of those things are true when real money is in the market. The problem is not the fear. The problem is what you do with it. A trader who suppresses fear and pretends it is not there eventually encounters it in explosive form, because the pressure builds and builds until it cannot be contained. A trader who is overwhelmed by fear and acts from it consistently makes decisions that are optimized for immediate emotional relief rather than long-term results. But a trader who acknowledges fear without obeying it has found something genuinely rare: the ability to feel the full weight of the situation and still act according to preparation rather than impulse. This capacity is built through a practice that most traders find deeply uncomfortable and therefore consistently avoid: the practice of sitting with a live position and not touching it, not adjusting the stop, not moving the target, not adding to the position. Simply watching the market move and letting the emotional experience of uncertainty exist without acting on it. This sounds passive, but it is among the most demanding things a trader can do, because the mind is constantly generating reasons why intervention is justified. The trade has moved far enough. Take some profit now. The momentum is slowing. Better to exit before it reverses. The volatility is picking up. This might be the signal to get out early. Each of these thoughts feels like analysis. Each of them is actually fear, dressed in analytical clothing. Distinguishing between the two is a skill that can only be developed through repeated exposure, through experiencing the thoughts, recognizing them for what they are, and choosing to follow the plan anyway. Greed operates through the same mechanism in the opposite direction. When a trade is moving well, the mind begins generating equally compelling reasons to deviate from the plan. The momentum is strong. Why not hold longer and capture more? The move looks extended. Maybe add another position here. The original target was conservative. Surely there is more left in this run. Each thought feels like sophisticated market reading. Each thought is actually greed, offering a justification for abandoning the rules that were set when the mind was clear. The calm trader has predefined the exit conditions and treats those definitions as binding. Not because he lacks the ability to adapt, but because he understands that the version of himself who set the rules before the trade began was more rational than the version sitting inside a profitable position, watching the profits grow. Trusting the plan means trusting the earlier version of yourself over the current version, which is a form of discipline that directly contradicts the way most people naturally make decisions under pressure. I want to describe what a genuinely disciplined pre-trade process looks like in practice, because most descriptions of it remain abstract and therefore useless. Before the market opens, before any position is considered, the trader sits with the setup he is evaluating and works through 4 specific scenarios. First, the trade moves immediately in his favor and reaches the target. What is the exact exit plan? Is there a portion to hold, or is the full position closed? Second, the trade moves immediately against him and hits the stop. What does that loss represent as a percentage of capital, and has that consequence been genuinely accepted? Third, the trade moves against him by a meaningful amount, but not enough to trigger the stop, then reverses and moves back toward entry. At what point does he consider the thesis intact, and at what point does a further move against him change his assessment? Fourth, the trade moves sideways for an extended period, doing nothing. What is the maximum time he is willing to hold a non-moving position before reassessing, and what will trigger a decision to exit without the stop being hit? Working through each of these scenarios before the trade is open does 2 things. It eliminates the ambiguity that fear exploits, because the mind now has a framework rather than a void to fall into when pressure rises. And it prevents the most expensive mistake in trading, which is making a significant decision for the first time in the middle of a live trade, when emotional pressure is at its highest. Patience in trading is not the patience of waiting for something to happen. It is the patience of allowing a process to unfold without interfering with it. There is a particular kind of discomfort in watching a trade sit without movement, holding near the entry level, going nowhere for an extended period. The mind interprets inactivity as a problem. Something should be happening. Maybe the setup is wrong. Maybe the timing is off. Maybe I should close this and find something that is actually moving. That internal pressure is not information about the trade. It is information about the trader's relationship with discomfort. The traders who learn to sit with that discomfort without acting on it are the ones who are still in the position when the move finally materializes. The traders who cannot tolerate the wait exit before the thesis plays out and then watch the price do exactly what they expected from the outside, out of the trade. This experience, being right about the direction but wrong about the endurance required to benefit from it, is one of the most psychologically costly in all of trading. It combines the pain of a missed opportunity with the specific frustration of having been correct about the analysis. And it teaches the wrong lesson if the trader concludes that patience does not work, rather than that his patience needs to be extended. The concept of noise versus signal is one that sounds straightforward and is exceptionally difficult to apply in real time. Every tick of the market carries information, but not every tick is relevant to the trade. A retracement within the structure of a valid move is noise. A move that breaks the structure identified as the basis for the trade is a signal. The distinction requires knowing in advance, before the trade is live, what would actually change the assessment of the setup. If that has not been defined in advance, every movement becomes potentially meaningful, and the mind drowns in data that is not actionable. Defining in advance what constitutes a signal that the thesis is broken, as opposed to normal market movement within an intact thesis, removes the ambiguity that fear exploits. When the market is ambiguous, fear fills the space. When the market is defined, there is nothing for fear to grip. Detachment from outcomes is the principle that most traders intellectually accept, and almost nobody actually practices. It is easy to say you are not attached to the result of any single trade. It is genuinely difficult to feel that detachment while sitting inside a position that is moving against you and watching the account balance decline in real time. The detachment that sustains calm trading is not indifference. You care about the money, you care about performing well, but you have separated the quality of your execution from the outcome of any individual trade because you understand that even perfect execution produces losses regularly. The market is not a test of whether your analysis was correct. It is a probabilistic environment where correct analysis produces losses a meaningful percentage of the time. If your self-assessment is tied to the outcome of each trade, you will be riding an emotional experience that makes consistent execution impossible. If your self-assessment is tied to whether you followed your process, losses become data rather than verdicts. That shift in what you are measuring about yourself is one of the most practically significant changes a trader can make, because it removes the primary source of emotional volatility that corrupts decision-making across a session. There is a dimension of trading psychology that rarely gets the attention it deserves. What happens to a trader's decision-making after a loss? Most traders know intellectually that losses are part of trading. Most traders experience a significant loss and then spend the rest of the session in a compromised emotional state, either chasing the lost capital through oversized trades or paralyzed by the fear of losing more. Both responses take the next trade out of the framework of the plan and into the framework of the emotional experience of the previous trade. The loss is now influencing a decision that has nothing to do with it. The next trade is being sized, timed, and managed based on what happened to the account, rather than what the market is presenting. That is emotional contagion, and it compounds losses faster than almost any other single factor in trading. The traders who break this pattern have developed a specific mental discipline, treating each trade as genuinely independent of every other trade. The account balance before any given trade is the starting point for that trade, not the emotional context for it. Whether the session is up or down is irrelevant to whether the current setup meets the criteria defined in the plan. Implementing this in practice requires a concrete transition ritual between trades, a deliberate act of clearing the previous trade from the mental workspace before evaluating the next opportunity. Some traders write the result of the completed trade in a journal before looking at the next setup. Some take a few minutes away from the screen. Some practice a specific breathing pattern that has become associated through repetition with the process of resetting. The specific method matters less than the consistency of its application. Risk management is where the philosophy of calm trading becomes arithmetic. You can have all the mental preparation in the world, but if the size of the position means that the financial consequence of a loss is genuinely threatening to your financial situation, calmness cannot be sustained through willpower alone. The position size must be calibrated so that the worst realistic outcome for any single trade does not produce a consequence that the trader cannot emotionally absorb. This is not the same as being comfortable with every loss, which is impossible. It means that the loss, if it occurs, does not create a new problem that overrides the original trading plan. When the potential loss on a single trade represents a meaningful portion of essential living expenses, or when it erodes the account to a level that threatens the ability to continue trading, the emotional weight of the position is too high for calm execution to be realistic. Reducing the size so that the worst case is genuinely survivable is not a concession to weakness. It is the prerequisite for the kind of disciplined execution that produces results across a large sample of trades. Consistency is the mechanism through which calmness compounds into something durable. A single calm trade is an achievement. Consistently calm trading across hundreds of trades is a transformation. The transformation occurs because each instance of following the plan under pressure reinforces the behavioral pattern associated with doing so. Each time the position is closed according to the rules, regardless of profitability, the association between pressure and disciplined response is strengthened. Each time the stop is moved or the exit is taken early out of fear, the opposite association is strengthened. The mind learns what is repeatedly done, not what is repeatedly intended. This is why the traders who maintain composure in live markets are almost always traders who have made disciplined execution a non-negotiable habit across a large sample of trades, including, and especially, the trades where the emotional pressure to deviate was highest. The habit of calm execution is not built in the easy trades. It is built in exactly the trades where breaking the rules feels most justified, and where following them feels most difficult. Overconfidence deserves its own examination because it destroys calmness through a mechanism that is completely different from fear, but equally effective. Fear makes the trader act too early to end the discomfort of uncertainty. Overconfidence makes the trader act too late because the certainty of being right has been allowed to override the signals from the market that the trade is failing. The trader who is certain of a direction holds the losing position far longer than the plan allowed because the certainty insulates him from the feedback the market is providing. He is not trading the market anymore. He is defending an opinion. And defending an opinion against a market that is providing contrary evidence is one of the most expensive things a trader can do. The antidote to overconfidence is not doubt, which produces its own set of problems, but rather a disciplined respect for the predefined plan that treats the plan's exit rules as binding, regardless of how certain the trader feels about the underlying thesis. If there is a single understanding to carry from everything explored here, it is this. Real money does not change the market. It changes you. It reveals the gap between the trader you are when the stakes are theoretical and the trader you are when the consequences are real. Closing that gap is not a matter of better analysis or more sophisticated strategy. It is a matter of building, through deliberate practice and honest self-examination, the mental infrastructure that allows you to function clearly in the precise conditions where functioning clearly is hardest. That infrastructure is built before the trade, through specific preparation that eliminates ambiguity. It is maintained during the trade, by following what was decided before it, and it is strengthened after the trade, by reviewing honestly whether the process was followed, regardless of the outcome. Do that consistently across enough trades, and the chaos of the live market gradually stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like the environment within which your preparation expresses itself. The pressure does not disappear. You become someone who can work clearly within it. That is the difference between the traders who survive this game and the ones who do not. And that difference is available to anyone willing to do the work required to build it, which is precisely why so few traders actually have it. If you found something real in this, drop a comment below and tell me the specific moment in a live trade when your calmness broke down. That honest answer is the beginning of everything.